moving on to UBA and the PAM section, right? What's your take on user behavior analytics, and what is the need, and how do you think it helps?
I think a lot of threat that happens from inside.
Okay.
That's the core. When you look at threat, there could be external threats, there could be internal threats. But probably what's getting missed out is we always look at what are the threats from the external world. We start talking about what's happening from outside in, but then we don't look at what's happening inside out. And that becomes that very important factor in terms of looking at user behavior analytics. The reason why it becomes very important is you are able to identify what are the inside threats, what are the anomalies that are happening. Could I probably be seeing, for instance, that a particular user has been has been sharing data at a particular point of time after office hours on a particular port that I see that my data movement is much higher. Now, these are things that we would probably be able to identify as we start moving into the whole thought process of user behavior analytics. And this becomes so very essential to track and identify from the perspective.
True. So do you think it's
privilege access management is going to be your extension? Probably if I'm going to say that your PAM or your privilege access management could be one of those ways to ensure that you are protecting, ensuring, and securing your network, your data on rest, data on transit. It becomes very important to look at from all these perspectives.
True. So
who's got access to what?
Right. Basis what you're saying, I also feel that UBA will be big in the coming years.
It's going to grow. It's definitely going to grow. That's where a lot of things are getting hinted at. Yes,
right. Interesting. Now, a host of IT standards, right, such as PCI DSS, HIPAA, ISO 27001, and regulations of GDPR, among many other local regulations, are as mandated by governments and central banks, explicitly ask for role and rule-based access, multi-factor authentication, password vaulting, etc., to protect data, that is. Now, why is there so much weightage given on PAM by these standards?
So probably, there are, you had mentioned quite a host of standards, right? For instance, it would be ISO 27001 2013, you have ISO 27001 2019, you have a NIST-based framework that you could talk about. How do you identify, recover, and respond, detect and respond? Or you could also talk about HIPAA, which is more from a compliance perspective. Or the other one that you had mentioned in terms of payment gateway, PCI DSS, is more from a payment gateway point of view. But then what becomes very essential is when you're talking about MFA or multi-factor authentication and also privilege access management, it becomes so very important that all these different frameworks say that this, though there are various frameworks, they all talk about one area, which is going to be a PAM, is just going to be about multi-factor authentication. It also talks about privilege escalation. Right. One very important thing that when you talk about privilege access management is also going to be in terms of privilege escalation. Say, for instance, what could probably happen if, if I want to take access or want to get, if I'm looking at how do I create a vulnerability and get into your system, I create a backdoor. Once a backdoor is created, the next thing that the person will do is escalation of privileges. So there's going to be an escalation of privileges that is going to happen, and then through the escalation of privileges, through which I'll be able to take, or I'll be able to take down different systems, right? So then it becomes important to also audit and evaluate what are the changes that we are seeing in terms of the roles and privileges that are happening. And this, when you combine with your overall UBA, it is going to be more benefiting in terms of also you getting to understand on what is happening in your own system, in your own network. So it becomes very, it's primarily that organizations start moving in. But is MFA alone sufficient? Probably no. With SIM cloning also happening, so then there is another possibility that even multi-factor authentication is probably not just going to be enough. There's something more that we will talk about it on a different platform again.
True. So many mandates, right? So many standards. I wish the CIOs and the CIBOs a good luck to decide on which one to implement and which one to not. Of course, that will be their decision completely. But thank you for shedding light on that bit, Dr. Mukund.